place where sorry is practically a national greeting, a country known for its universal healthcare system, starkly different from its southern neighbor. Is there a nation that somehow balances rugged wilderness with sophisticated urban life? Here, hockey isn't just a sport, it's a religion, and the distinct accent is as recognizable as the maple leaf flag. All of this is real in Canada. Join us as we explore some of the most incredible and unique facts about life in Canada in today's insightful documentary. Number 15. Canada's Mammoth Scale. More land, fewer people. Stepping into Canada is stepping into the second largest country, by total area in the world, a geographical reality that immediately sets it apart from its southern neighbor, the United States. Covering a staggering 3.85 million square miles, 9.98 million square kilometers, Canada is slightly larger than the USA's total area of 3.80 million square miles, 9.83 million square kilometers. However, this is where the similarities in scale end. Despite its immense size, Canada is home to a population of just over 40 million people as of late 2023. Compare this to the United States, which, while slightly smaller in land area, boasts a population exceeding 330 million. This fundamental difference in population density means that vast stretches of Canada remain sparsely populated wilderness, unlike the more extensively developed and interconnected landscapes found across much of the contiguous U.S. While the U.S. has its wild spaces, Canada's sheer emptiness in many regions creates a unique sense of frontier and isolation that is less common south of the border. The majority of Canadians live within a few hundred kilometers of the U.S. border, leaving the central and northern regions incredibly vast and untouched. This geographical reality shapes infrastructure, resource management, and even the national psyche in ways that are distinctly Canadian, fostering a connection to nature that feels different from the U.S. experience. Number 14. The Healthcare Divide, a tale of two systems. Perhaps the most significant systemic difference between life in Canada and the United States lies in their healthcare systems. Canada operates under a universal, publicly funded healthcare system known as Medicare. This means that most essential medical services, including doctor visits, hospital stays, and surgeries, are covered by taxes and provided without direct cost to the patient at the point of service. While there can be wait times for certain procedures and services not covered, like dentistry, optometry, or prescription drugs outside of hospital, the fundamental principle is that access to necessary medical care is based on need, not on the ability to pay. In contrast, the United States has a complex, largely private healthcare system driven by insurance. While there are government programs like Medicare and Medicaid for specific populations, seniors, low-income individuals, the majority of Americans rely on private health insurance, often tied to employment. This can result in significant out-of-pocket costs, deductibles, co-pays, and the risk of medical debt, issues that are largely mitigated for essential services under the Canadian system. Canadians often view their healthcare system with pride, seeing it as a fundamental right and a key component of their social safety net, a perspective that differs sharply from the often market-driven approach to healthcare prevalent in the USA. While debates about efficiency and funding exist in Canada, the core principle of universal access remains a defining feature of life there. Number 13. Urban living. Distinct flavors. North of the border, Canada's major cities, think Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, offer vibrant urban experiences, each with its own distinct character. Yet they often present a different feel compared to their large U.S. counterparts like New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. Canadian cities tend to be perceived as generally cleaner and safer than many comparably sized U.S. cities, although urban challenges like homelessness and cost of living increases are growing concerns. Toronto, Canada's largest city, is a sprawling, multicultural metropolis often likened to cities like Chicago or aspects of New York, but with a slightly less frenetic pace. Its public transit system is extensive, though perhaps not reaching the legendary punctuality of systems in Japan or the comprehensive coverage of New York's subway. Vancouver, on the Pacific coast, is renowned for its stunning natural beauty, nestled between mountains and the ocean, offering a lifestyle that blends urban amenities with easy access to outdoor recreation. A quality shared with some U.S. Pacific Northwest cities like Seattle, but perhaps with a more laid-back vibe. Montreal, in Quebec, stands out with its strong French heritage, bilingualism, and European flair, offering a cultural experience truly unique within North America. While U.S. cities often have distinct, clearly defined business and residential districts, Canadian cities can feel a bit more integrated in places. The cost of living, particularly housing, has become incredibly high in major Canadian cities like Vancouver and Toronto, rivaling or even exceeding costs in some of the most expensive U.S. cities like San Francisco or New York. However, overall daily expenses outside of housing might be slightly lower in some categories compared to certain US locales. The pedestrian culture is strong in downtown cores, and while cars are still prevalent, public transit is a more central part of the urban commute for many compared to sprawling U.S. cities like Los Angeles. Number 12. Embracing the deep freeze. Life in a winter wonderland. If you're moving to most parts of Canada, you will experience winter, and often, it's a significant part of the year. Canadian winters are legendary for their cold temperatures and substantial snowfall, a stark contrast to the more temperate or diverse climates found across the southern and coastal regions of the United States. While the U.S. has snowy states, like Minnesota or Vermont, the duration and intensity of winter in many Canadian provinces are on another level. Canadians, however, don't just hunker down, they embrace it. Winter sports like hockey, skiing, snowboarding, and ice skating are deeply ingrained in the culture. Cities build elaborate outdoor skating rinks, and communities often have local hockey leagues for all ages. The concept of winterizing your home and car is essential, and reliable snow removal is a necessity. This shared experience of enduring and enjoying the cold fosters a certain resilience and community spirit. While parts of the northern U.S. share this winter reality, for a larger percentage of the population, particularly those concentrated along the southern border, the Canadian winter is a defining element of life that shapes everything from architecture to daily routines and even fashion. It's a different relationship with the elements than one typically finds in much of the sunnier or milder parts of the United States. Number 11. The Mosaic versus the Melting Pot. A tale of two cultures. Canada often describes itself as a multicultural mosaic, a metaphor that suggests different cultural groups maintain their distinct identities and traditions while coexisting within the larger society. This is often contrasted with the U.S. concept of a melting pot, where various cultures are seen as blending together to form a new, unified American identity. Historically and currently, Canada actively encourages and celebrates cultural diversity through government policies, festivals, and support for ethnic communities. Major cities like Toronto and Vancouver are renowned for their incredible range of ethnic neighborhoods, restaurants, and cultural events, where communities actively preserve and showcase their heritage. While the United States is undeniably diverse, the emphasis in Canada is arguably more on the preservation of distinct cultural identities within the national framework. This is reflected in everything from language policies, official bilingualism, in English and French, to the prominence of diverse cultural programming on public broadcasters. Walking through different neighborhoods in a Canadian city can feel like a journey through various parts of the world, with vibrant expressions of global cultures visible and celebrated. What do you think of the Mosaic approach to multiculturalism? Does it sound more appealing than the melting pot? Comment 1 for Mosaic, 2 for melting pot. Canada's population, though smaller than the U.S., is increasingly diverse. As of the 2021 census, approximately 23% of the population was born outside of Canada, one of the highest proportions among G7 countries. Visible minorities constitute a significant and growing portion of the population, particularly in urban areas. For example, in Toronto, visible minorities make up over 50% of the population. The largest visible minority groups include South Asians, Chinese, and Black Canadians. This level of recent immigration and visible diversity, particularly in major cities, is a significant demographic trend that shapes social dynamics, similar to trends in major U.S. gateway cities, but perhaps with a slightly different national narrative around integration and identity. Number 10. Politeness, more than just a stereotype? The stereotype of the overly polite Canadian is pervasive, and while any stereotype has its limits, there's often a kernel of truth rooted in cultural norms. Compared to the more direct and sometimes confrontational communication styles found in parts of the United States, Canadians are generally perceived as more reserved, deferential, and conflict-averse. Saying sorry frequently, even when not at fault, is a common observation, often used as a conversational softener. This cultural inclination towards politeness and avoiding direct confrontation can be seen in daily interactions, from driving habits, though this can vary, to customer service and public discourse. While Americans might value assertiveness and directness, Canadians often prioritize maintaining social harmony and avoiding inconvenience to others. This isn't to say Canadians aren't assertive or opinionated, but the way they express it can often be more understated. This subtle difference in social etiquette is a noticeable aspect of life north of the border, and contributes to the generally more relaxed and less hurried atmosphere often perceived in Canadian public spaces compared to busy U.S. environments. Number 9. Nature's abundance. The great outdoors as a national backyard. Given its immense size and low population density, Canada boasts an unparalleled wealth of natural landscapes and easy access to the outdoors. From the rugged Rocky Mountains and the vast boreal forest to the stunning coastlines of the Atlantic and Pacific, and the thousands of lakes, Canada has more lakes than the rest of the world combined. Nature is an integral part of the Canadian identity and lifestyle. National and provincial parks are numerous and provide protected spaces for hiking, camping, fishing, and wildlife viewing. While the United States also has an incredible national park system and diverse natural environments, the sheer scale of accessible wilderness relative to the population is arguably greater in Canada. Many Canadians live relatively close to opportunities for outdoor recreation, and spending time in nature is a popular pastime. This connection to the natural world shapes conservation efforts, tourism, and provides a contrasting escape from urban life that is readily available across the country. It's a backyard that's millions of square kilometers large. Number 8. The French connection, bilingualism, and cultural identity. One of the most significant cultural and linguistic differences between Canada and the United States is Canada's official bilingualism in English and French. This is largely due to the historical influence and continued presence of Quebec, a predominantly French-speaking province with a unique culture and identity. While English is the dominant language in most of Canada, French holds official status alongside English at the federal level, and Quebec has its own laws promoting the use of French. This bilingual reality means that federal government services, packaging, and signs are often in both languages. In Quebec, life is predominantly in French, and while English is widely spoken in Montreal, venturing outside the major cities requires some French proficiency. This creates a distinct cultural dynamic within Canada, fostering a sense of two founding nations which is absent in the predominantly English-speaking United States. It adds a layer of complexity and richness to the national identity, sometimes leading to political and cultural tensions, but also creating a unique North American society with a foot in both Anglophone and Francophone worlds. Number 7. Education. A different path to learning. The structure and funding of education in Canada differ in notable ways from the United States. In Canada, education falls primarily under provincial jurisdiction, leading to variations between provinces, but the system is generally publicly funded from kindergarten through high school. Post-secondary education, college and university, is also largely publicly funded, resulting in significantly lower tuition fees compared to many universities and colleges in the United States, particularly private institutions. While the U.S. has a mix of public and private K-12 schools, the vast majority of Canadian students attend public schools. The emphasis and approaches can vary, but the foundational principle of accessible, publicly funded education from primary to tertiary levels is a key difference. Student debt, while a concern in Canada, is generally not at the same crisis level as in the United States due to lower tuition costs. This makes higher education more financially accessible for a larger segment of the population, shaping social mobility and workforce development differently than in the U.S. Number 6. The pace of life, finding the balance. While generalization is always tricky, many observers note a slightly less intense, perhaps slower, pace of life in Canada compared to the often high-speed, achievement-driven culture found in major U.S. cities. This is not to say Canadians aren't hardworking or ambitious, but there can be a stronger emphasis on work-life balance and leisure time. Vacation time is often more generous than is standard in the U.S., typically a minimum of 2 weeks paid vacation. By law, often increasing with seniority compared to no federal minimum in the U.S. There's a cultural appreciation for cottages, cabins, as retreats for weekends and holidays. While major Canadian cities certainly have their hustle and bustle, the overall societal rhythm can feel a bit more relaxed, particularly outside of the largest metropolitan areas. This difference in pace influences everything from daily commutes to weekend activities and the overall stress levels experienced by residents. Do you think a slightly slower pace sounds appealing? Comment 3. If you prefer the Canadian pace, or 4 if you thrive on the U.S. pace. Number 5. The cost of living. Urban squeeze and regional variation. Like the United States, the cost of living in Canada varies dramatically depending on location. Major cities like Vancouver and Toronto are among the most expensive places to live in the world, with housing costs, rent and purchasing, being a significant burden, easily comparable to or exceeding those in expensive U.S. cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, or New York. However, outside of these few major hubs, the cost of living can be considerably lower, particularly in smaller cities and rural areas across the prairies or Atlantic provinces. Groceries and consumer goods can sometimes be slightly more expensive in Canada due to factors like taxes and importing costs. But the overall burden is often mitigated by lower healthcare costs, and in some regions, more affordable housing. The economic landscape also differs. While the U.S. has a larger, more diverse economy, Canada's is heavily reliant on natural resources, which can lead to regional economic disparities not always mirrored in the U.S. Navigating the cost of living requires careful consideration of location and priorities, similar to the U.S., but with specific Canadian challenges related to housing affordability in major centers. Number 4. Safety and security, a generally lower crime rate. While crime exists in Canada, as it does everywhere, the country generally has lower rates of violent crime compared to the United States. This contributes to a feeling of safety and security in many Canadian cities and towns, which is a significant factor for residents and newcomers alike. Gun control laws are significantly stricter in Canada than in the United States, which is often cited as a contributing factor to lower rates of gun violence. While property crime and other issues are present, the level of public safety in daily life, particularly in urban environments, is often perceived as higher than in many U.S. cities. This allows for a greater sense of freedom and ease in public spaces, influencing everything from how people commute to how communities interact. Number 3. Public transit, connecting cities and commuters. Major Canadian cities have invested significantly in public transit systems, offering bus, subway, and light rail options that are central to urban mobility. While perhaps not as extensive or punctual as some of the world's leading systems, they are generally reliable and provide a viable alternative to car ownership in downtown areas. Cities like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver have relatively comprehensive transit networks. While the U.S. also has extensive public transit in its major cities, like New York, Chicago, Boston, the level of reliance on and investment in public transit can feel more pronounced in Canadian urban planning, partly influenced by the desire to mitigate the effects of harsh winters on commuting. Intercity rail travel exists via VIA Rail, though it is generally less extensive and often slower than Amtrak in the U.S., reflecting the vast distances and lower population density between Canadian cities. Number 2. Food and drink. More than just maple syrup and poutine, Canadian cuisine has evolved beyond the popular stereotypes of maple syrup, poutine, a delicious dish of fries, cheese curds, and gravy, and Nanaimo bars. While those are certainly iconic, Canada offers a diverse culinary scene influenced by its geography, immigrant populations, and historical ties. Fresh seafood on the coasts, prairie beef, Quebecois comfort food, and a rapidly growing farm-to-table movement are all part of the picture. Major cities boast world-class restaurants reflecting the country's multiculturalism, from authentic ethnic eateries to innovative fusion cuisine. While the U.S. has a dominant fast food culture and regional variations, Canadian food culture feels like a blend of British, French, Indigenous, and global influences, with a growing emphasis on local and seasonal ingredients. Grocery shopping can sometimes be slightly more expensive than in the U.S., but the quality and availability of diverse food options, especially in urban areas, are significant aspects of life. Number 1. Civic engagement and social safety nets. A different social contract. Life in Canada is shaped by a different social contract compared to the United States, with a greater emphasis on collective well-being and government-funded social safety nets. Beyond healthcare, Canada has programs like employment insurance, robust public pension plans, and various social assistance programs designed to support citizens. This reflects a cultural value that places a higher priority on community support and shared responsibility. While the U.S. emphasizes individualism and self-reliance to a greater degree, Canada leans more towards a social democratic model where the government plays a larger role in providing essential services and supporting vulnerable populations. This difference influences everything from tax rates to social programs and the overall sense of community responsibility. What aspects of Canada's social safety net do you find most interesting compared to the U.S.? Comment 5 if it's healthcare, 6 if it's unemployment support, or 7 for something else. We've just taken a whirlwind tour through some of the defining aspects of life in Canada, exploring its vastness, diverse culture, unique systems, and distinct way of life. From navigating the deep freeze to appreciating the mosaic of cultures, Canada offers a North American experience that stands apart from its southern neighbor. Hopefully, this gave you a fresh perspective on the Great White North and how it compares to life in the USA. What was the most surprising fact you learned today? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to follow our channel, like and share the video to support us. See you in the next one.